Welcome to Connect Canyons, a podcast sponsored by Canyon School District. This is a show about what we teach, how we teach, and why. We get up close and personal with some of the people who make our schools great. Students, teachers, principals, parents, and more. We meet national experts too. Learning is about making connections. So connect with us.
Wouldn't it be nice if love was all around us? That's just one of the thought-provoking questions in Daniel Nayeri's book, The Many Assassinations of Samir, the Seller of Dreams. Nayeri is an award-winning author of more than a dozen books. Welcome to Connect Canyons. I'm your host, Francis Cook. So why are we talking about this nationally renowned author? Well, that's because he's here with us today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
How Mr. Nayeri's visit to Canyon School District came about is thanks to two teachers from Albion Middle School, Stephanie Kourianos and Stephanie Nasser. They are also joining us today, along with Albion Principal Eric Gardner. Thank you all for being here. Now, I'd like to start with our teachers. Tell us about your idea and how this visit came about. And it's not just a quick visit to a classroom with a little reading of an excerpt. You took this to a whole new level.
The goal of this project was to unleash the power of one shared text, and that's kind of our jumping off point for this. So we went to NCTE way back in November of 2023, and we realized that Daniel Nayeri was going to be at the conference, and we made sure that we were going to be there because we both loved his book, Everything Sad is Untrue. And we were kind of fangirled about that story and said, we have to go, we have to meet him. So we came with our books ready to sign, and he was there on a panel talking about his new book, The Many Assassinations of Samir. And at that point, after he spoke, Stephanie Nasser turned to me and she said, we're going to have Daniel Nayeri come to our school, and we are going to have every grade read this story. And that's going to happen. And I was like, all right, you got this. Yes, let's do this.
So to add to what Stephanie is saying, we also went to see sessions about how to do an all-community read at a school. And as we were sitting there, what dawned on us was the power of empathy and teaching middle schoolers what it is to be empathetic towards another person. And it's in today's culture, it's such an important skill to teach and for students to learn. And you can't just teach at them, you have to teach it with them. And so we came back and sat down with our principal and said, we need to do this, and this is how we need to do this, and we need to immerse an author with our students on a very personal level, where he can talk with them, he can do some of the great elective classes with them. And Mr. Gardner's response was, this is great, where are we going to get the money? So from there, I, being on school community council, had to pitch it to them, and they were on board right away. Parents were passionate about creating reading as being a focal point for the entire school around the text. Skip ahead a year, and I said to Stephanie, we have to get money like this. It's not just about the fees to bring in an author, it's about resources to create art and music and cooking and everything that we want to go with it. The ordering of 300 plus books and all of that. So we went after a couple of grants. Our first grant that we were awarded was Voya, which is Voya Unsung Heroes, where we got $2,000. And then the next one was the Canyons Ed Foundation, where we were very generously awarded $8,000. And so we were able then to take all those funds and give them back to Mr. Gardner to be able to use to cover anything and everything around this visit.
We also got donors choose.
And we did, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we got a donors
Donors
choose.
choose
so
for a whole set of
whole
books.
set of books.
Yeah.
You guys went to town. You know, it's such a great idea of having it go beyond just a single classroom reading something. I want to come back to that, but you talked about empathy. Daniel, I'd like to bring you back in, and let's talk about how you came up with the idea for Samir's story and his little monkey. And, you know, for me, it was a very interesting way of learning empathy.
Well, thank you. For me, it was a very interesting way of learning empathy, but for a slightly different reason. The book I'd written previous to that was a book called Everything Sad is Untrue, and it was about my coming to the United States with my mother. My father had stayed back in Iran, and so in a lot of ways it's about the strength that my mom sort of shows, and she's kind of the hero of that story. And everyone sort of said, wow, that's like a love letter to your mom. And I said, yeah, you know, that is what this, you know, my early childhood looked like. But then there was this little seed planted where I was like, what would it look like if I was writing something, you know, for and about my dad, trying to explain my dad to people. And that is something that was particularly challenging for me because he's always sort of just been a voice on the phone. And so as I started to think more about him, it started to take on a bit more of a fictional character as well. I was having to sort of fill in some gaps. And so I called my agent and I said, okay. And she's like, well, you know, what have you got next? And I said, you know, an 11th century Silk Road comedy in modern, you know, ancient Uzbekistan. And she didn't hang up, so thank goodness. But I got to write that story, and it is about someone who, you know, for me represents my father's personality a lot. But the rest isn't exactly the same. It's a portly huckster. He's this merchant who goes from village to village swindling people, and his assistant, who he calls Monkey because he used to be a monk. And Monkey is telling you the story. He's telling you that my master is an unserious man. I don't like him very much at all. Monkey is a very religious and devout young boy, and so he thinks that his master's a liar, and he thinks he sort of deserves it when they find out that each of the villages that this man has swindled have gotten pretty upset, and they've each hired a different assassin to come and kill him. And so he says, you know, even though he doesn't deserve it, even though, you know, my master is a con artist and a huckster, I had to save his life 6 times. And would you believe it? He still didn't free me. And he said, and so this is, of course, the witness of Monkey, because he tells you at the front that he was the 7th and the successful assassin. And so from there, you're thrown into the story of how Monkey and Samir kind of come to be at first, and you know, this odd pairing who end up becoming not only friends but family, and you know, gain this incredible relationship where they each sort of bring something to teach to the other person.
I thought you did a wonderful job of kind of that foresight, but also throwing you for a loop. You know, the very first chapter is the first time I was ever stoned to death, and you go, wait, what?
That's right.
You can do that twice? I didn't know that was a thing. But I will say, every time I see the word nonsense now, I hear it in the narrator's voice. Nonsense.
Nonsense.
Samir says nonsense all the time. So it's this wonderful weaving. And as teachers, I love how then you took that and you turn it into so many different lessons. So for the last 2 days, your entire school, your entire community has spent learning with this book as the pillar of everything you've been able to achieve. Walk me through how the last couple of days have gone for all of you.
It's been fantastic in so many ways. One thing, we read the book and we listened to it on audio, and so we were listening. Daniel narrates the book, and so the kids have been listening to Daniel, you know, his voice for weeks, and then to finally see his face and to hear him, I think was a pretty cool thing for all of the kids. They really have been so excited for his visit. They had all sorts of questions, you know, and I would say, you should ask that when he is at our school. And so we really built up this, you know, excitement around him coming to our school. To finally have it be here and have the kids be so sweet, and so many kids wanted their books signed, and it was really nice to see all of our planning and everything that we have been talking about for the last 18 months kind of come to fruition.
So one of the things that happened the second time we were with Daniel was he shared a snack with us it was dates that we knew before then that his prior career was a pastry chef.
A professional pastry chef.
Yes,
my
and
mind is blown at the amount of things on your resume.
Just so you know, we learned that story today, and it's a fascinating story. But side note, so he shared this snack, and so that kind of sparked this whole, wait, we can go outside of English, and we can bring in all these other courses and classes and electives that happen. And so Daniel made his snack that he makes all the time at home with our fac students. Our art students wanted to put together a batik based on the story, which all 700, and they all touched it, right? And the music department did this huge project based on the novel where their culmination was coming together to play, but they also individually created these projects. Science looked at the wind with the sand and how it affects people if you're walking on it. The discovery of the number 0, which is another really big deal. And all the way to our STEM class, which is they did woodshop, and Daniel got to create a phone stand today, right?
Yes, although the student Leela was mostly guiding my hand.
Yes.
There's some very, very patient students in that class. But yeah, I got to do everything. I've never gotten to do that before. I've never had such an immersive experience where I feel like in 2 days I got to go into every part of the school, right? I've never gotten to go. I've always wanted to. I always ask, but never thought I would get the opportunity. And to have Stephanie both kind of not only get behind it, but allow it. It's almost always shut down because I've been asking for years, but now in the last 2 days, we got to go and cook with the students, and I got to tell them about the Silk Road snack, and I was in a wood shop. We were in art classes. There was pottery. It's just a blur. But and of course we got to talk to the students who really want to be writers and do pull up our sleeves, talk shop about their writing and their response. And to me, that the whole of it has been this really incredible spirit that I'm not used to, right? What happens sometimes, and every visit is beautiful in its own way, but often what happens with visits is you'll come in and people have already read your work, right? And so the energy is sort of always, you come in and they're reacting to that work. And so the energy is always sort of pointed toward you. And that's lovely and it's nice. But, the highest achievement that any artist can have, right? The highest achievement any writer can have is to be like an inspiration to other people to make things, right? The compliments are nice. The compliments are, I'm not allergic to compliments, but if, to be an epigraph in someone else's novel, that quite literally is saying, you've inspired a piece of this work, right? To be someone that other artists look to as someone who, sparked their imagination. And to have these last 2 days be that across every topic, right? Now the science students are making things, and the art students are making pottery, and the cooking students are making food. They're all making their own thing, and the writers got to share their work, right? That is a very powerful thing, because now the energy gets to be not only sort of more balanced, but now I can react to their work. I can say, wow, I just read your work, and I really like this little line here, and I thought this was great, and I'd love to see more of this, and that is exactly the way I would love to interact, because one, it is the highest honor you can have, is that this in some way was sparked by something you wrote, but also you get to be the thing that I was first, which is I get to be a reader, I get to be an eater, I get to be a student, I get to be somebody who reacts to art in front of me. And the school has been Albion Middle has been wall to wall covered in the projects of these students, from comparisons of the Silk Road travel networks to the Great Westward Migration travel networks.
Oh, wow.
Did that in Utah studies, and then but you also have spiral pottery from art class, and felting in a different class, and of course the English department doing all kinds of deep dives into the lyricism of certain sections of the text, or the history, of course. There's so much to react to, and it's all over the walls. You just get to walk in and see it. So that's been a delight.
I imagine it's got to be so different for you as an author to come into a situation like that. It's where there's something new for everyone. Eric, how have you seen students reacting and teachers reacting to this group project, as it were?
I would say it was almost like a giant snowball that picked up steam as we first pitched it out there to the staff. You had some people jump on board instantly, and then there were others that were a little skeptical. But it was interesting as we've done things the whole idea of that book is community. At least that was a big takeaway that I took from it. And so, but as we've done stuff as a staff, like we had a paint night a few weeks ago, and like to watch everybody come together teacher-wise, and then all of a sudden everyone, those who were even hesitant to maybe participate at first, they're the ones coming up with the projects and putting the displays on. Like, I've just loved it. And then one thing that I've just loved from this is, we've been able to reach every kid from a broad level, like at today's assembly. And then the one that I love the most is yesterday's writers workshop, where to sit in front of a Newbery Award winner and to have them actually read your story, and not just read it, but give specific feedback about it. I remember nuclear fallout or darkness. Isn't that what it was? Yeah.
Nuclear silence.
And he knew the characters' names. It was like Mikal something. I can't pronounce it. Anyways, but it was touching. It was getting to me. So I left because I was starting to tear up, and I was just, what kid really gets that experience? And so I love this whole thing that it's brought us all together, both staff and students, and it's given everyone in the school an opportunity that I would say most kids don't typically get.
I loved hearing your favorite part about it, and you're right. I think most writers or anyone who's aspiring to be something, right, you don't always get that level of somebody sitting down who knows what they're doing and being able to come to you and say, yeah, this part's great, or you need to work on that. So that's really special. I'd love to hear your other favorite parts from the last 2 days. Do the three of you, the two Stephanies and Daniel, is there a highlight that just sticks with you? Or is it all still sinking in?
I would say for me, one of the most highlights was yesterday we gave out passes to anybody who wanted to get, a book signed, a piece of paper signed, like we didn't care, right? And the line was out the door of the library. And Daniel, when he signs his book, depending on which book he's signing, he has a specific illustration that he uses. And Stephanie, the other Stephanie, was walking the line, writing the names down, because we learned quickly how we have to do this. And I was sitting next to him, and I kept going, we're not going to get through the line. We're not going to get through the line. Like, I feel really bad. He's like, it's okay. Because he's drawing a picture. But he made every student feel seen and every student feel heard. And in that short interchange, those students walked away with the feeling of, yeah, this is a Newbery Award honoree winner, but he's a person just like you, just like me, and that maybe I can do this too, because I'm a person too. And I think, like, going into the different classrooms, whether he was just answering questions, or today we played a game with characters. It was so much fun in creative writing, which was a blast. But every student, from your resource special ed kid all the way up to your accelerated kid, was able to be touched by this experience. He did go into a resource class yesterday. He did sit on the floor and do a fireside chat with a resource English class. And those kids, they're all boys, right? There were all boys in there except for one student. And you could tell that these boys don't read. They struggle. And yet they resonated with the humanity that Daniel represents. And that's a big deal. Yeah. That's a big deal. So, like Eric said, it's so important that broad spectrum, we all got together in the auditorium. But I would say, over the last 2 days, Steph, disagree, like, he's probably touched 600-700 students individually without realizing that vast number, spent time with him and got to have a moment with him, to the point where he remembers names, by the way, which is obscene because it takes teachers so many weeks to learn their students' names.
That's beautiful. Stephanie Kay, how about you?
I think a couple of moments that will stick with me is one, yesterday at the writer's workshop, the first kid to get feedback on his writing was sitting in the front, and I watched his little face he was getting feedback from a real author that was published and has won awards. Yeah, and he just was. I took a little picture of his face because he couldn't get enough of it, and I thought that is something special that he'll remember forever. And a lot of the kids felt the same. They reacted the same way. I also loved yesterday when we went into the orchestra. They played some songs. And after they played their songs, they talked about how the song connected to the feelings of the story. Mm-hmm. And hearing them make these connections that were so deep and thoughtful, and show, they really, for me, it was like they understood our goal. They're doing it, they're getting it. And so that was a really, without telling them, they were getting it. So that was a really special time for me to see that.
That's got to be fulfilling as educators to, set this goal. I mean, the two of you have been working on this for a year and a half now, and to have it finally happen and then see, that aha moment, they got it. That's beautiful. Daniel, what's been your biggest takeaway?
Oh my goodness, it's been amazing. I have two. The first one
That's
is
allowed.
I'm gonna tell you the story of meeting the two Stephanies from my perspective. I came down. I was these conferences are really full of people and there's all kinds of things, and they can be very. They can just be kind of a blur of people and faces and whatnot. And I was sitting in this hotel lobby waiting for someone, and I was doing some just writing, and I hear from across the way, and I'm not a particularly what's the right word? Like I'm a pretty introverted person. Like I'm pretty shy, I guess is the right word. And so I just hear my name, and that feeling a shy person gets when they're like, oh my gosh, I've been made into I've been made into a public spectacle. What's happening? No, but I hear, and it was Stephanie
if you didn't
Nasser.
want to be a public spectacle, maybe
said,
don't do so well.
And I looked up, and that was all the confirmation she needed to know that she had guessed correctly. And they came over, and they were so excited. They were so genuine and so delightful to say, like, and I should point out, like, outside of writing conferences, like, people don't shout and scream my name or anything like that. That's not what I'm used to at the ice cream shop. So I, and it's delightful on some level, and also kind of like, okay, hello, you three know each other, and we teach at the same school, and we'd like to have you come, and also that's a really lovely personal situation, and you sort of bookmark it because you're gonna have 100 more interactions in the next 2 days. Sure. But you sort of it's one you remember, and then the next time, but they stayed in touch, and there was this feeling that, okay, these three might be the real deal. This might be, but you don't know. Everybody talks, everybody says nice things. As we know, in the arts, you can sort of die of encouragement. And people because everybody can be nice, and so. But then the next time I was going somewhere, they were like, "Are you going to be at this conference?" And I said, "Yeah." And they were going to be presenting at the conference, and could we make some time? And I said, "Sure, of course. Let's try it out." And again, you sort of meet them, and there's just an overflow of energy and enthusiasm, but also like understanding of what's going to happen and vision and all these things. And you go, "Okay, yeah. I think they might be the real deal." And
this might actually happen.
But then you get here. And it's a whole different thing. I get here, and you say, and there's just some important dynamics to point out. In schools and in stuff in general. My goal is never like I'm not a big fan of trying to put kids into a situation where they're just like losing their minds because like, oh look, it's like excitement over, because kids can be just like. They can be churned up, and
overly excited
for anything, even the wrong thing. And I think for me, always one of my goals is to come in and say, actually, sort of democratize all these things, art, as much as possible. Like, I did not come from a space where it would be expected of me to have done anything like this. I certainly, it's been a surprise. When I got to this country, I sort of thought, I thought my son would get to have a good life, and so. And so when you land, you're like, oh, okay, this is, how are they going to handle this? And in other scenarios, sometimes what they want is the most sanitized version because, it's a very maybe a bureaucratic situation and they don't know who I am. They don't yet have the trust in me that I could really speak to their kids. And so they don't really want a personal experience. They want a sanitized experience. Come in, just give us your stump speech, do a signing, and that's fine. That's all. That's all the programming. We'll do a signing at the local bookstore as well. And that's for what it's worth. It's a great event. That's fine. But it takes an incredible amount of trust and personal connection. And so, I got in and I went, oh, okay, this is kind of what they're going for, and the underpinning reason for that is because their agenda is my agenda as well, right? Their agenda is to say to kids, look, you can do it too. The agenda is fundamentally to say that, yes, these things of the world, right, of medals are nice, bestseller things, all those things, they're nice. Nobody who wouldn't want them, and I'm excited about them. But actually, he'll be just as jazzed about your writing as you are of his, and to have the opportunity to speak to them personally about that, and to have them meet them there, that's a trust that I think teachers put in you, because you could show up and also insult a kid or not hold a fragile moment delicately, but at the same time it truly sort of takes the real deal kind of teachers who are kind of spending a year to do this, to build for their students. That's not normal. I'm really thankful for that. It was a surprise in almost every way. These last 2 days.
It's beautiful. I think you're right. It takes a certain amount of trust to bring in somebody you have only met a time or two at a conference, and not only grant access to a classroom but to hundreds of students. And it worked. It sounds like it worked very well. I'd love just, final thoughts from anyone who'd like to share, just why events like this are important when it comes to educating our young ones and, showing them again that you can do this too. This is, whatever you want to do, reach for it. It's attainable.
All right, I'll go first on this. All this to me started a year and a half ago when I started at Albion, in the sense of I truly believe that you should invest in your teachers, your students, and you got to hire some staff to support it. But, when I pitched them the idea, I want you guys to go to national conferences. The whole idea is to get inspired, to learn these new ideas and see things differently. So when they came back and they said, we want to do an all-community read, we heard about it, but we could do better than what we heard about it. I said, well, that's a great idea. I said, well, what's the book you want to read? And they're like, it's about the Silk Roads. And I said, I'm already sold. You can stop right there, because the whole purpose of the Silk Roads, right, was this transmission of ideas. And to watch teachers get inspired and invested and motivated over this whole thing was just awesome. And then to watch the students get on board with it as well, it's everything you could hope for as not only a principal, but an educator and a parent. And so to inspire people, right? That's the business we're in. And some lessons, do I think a kid's going to look back and remember their math lesson they had today? No. But do I think they'll remember an experience like this? Yes.
Well, and to that, when we applied for the grant, we were asking other teachers that had won the grant in the past, and it was never for an experience, even though it says in the descriptor that it can be an experience. And I remember saying to Stephanie, this is a long shot, but we got to try, because in the past it'd been equipment or resources or something. Sure. And when we won because this is an immersive experience. Yeah. And that and Eric believed in our mission. He believed in what we were after. And we, putting aside, yes, face to face with Daniel a couple of times, but many Zoom calls, many face to face Zoom calls. I guess on behalf of Stephanie and myself, thank you to Daniel for trusting us that we weren't going to, do anything, and to provide such a loving, approachable environment, which if anything, I think that's Mr. Gardner, like to allow us to fly, but he also believed that our students would embrace this. It's not like every school you would want to do something like this because the population and he has created a population of students that thrive, right? Yeah. I think the last 2 days has been evident of that for sure.
You mentioned the grant, and Daniel, I think you hit this nail on the head as well, that, these two are just so passionate about teaching, and Eric as well. But I remember when we came in and announced the grant winners, Stephanie Nasser was just over the moon excited. They're the cutest pictures, and you can just see it in her face of just, what? We won? This is amazing. And I remember Denise Haycock, the development officer for the Canyons Education Foundation, said, this was so unique because it's an experience. It's great to be able to provide those physical resources, the devices or classroom materials that you might need, or maybe a teacher's getting a 3D printer, but to be able to support something like an experience. Are they going to remember the math problem? No, maybe they'll remember that they had a little market and you could buy materials and things, but they'll remember getting to talk to Daniel. Stephanie K., how about you?
I think we really wanted to capture or create, we wanted to be innovative in how we taught kids to have empathy, to dream big, to be kind to each other, and to show them that their learning is connected, that a story that they read in ELA has connections to the art they're creating, has connections to the music that they learn, has connections to science and math, and even Utah studies, right? Yeah. And this book that we read was from the 11th century. Like that's when it takes place, right? Right. Book takes place during around the 11th century, and the kids were able to connect to the feelings and the emotions and of the story. And I think all of that was just really important. And then to have Daniel come at the end and really support all of the things that they learned through the book was very kind of a really cool thing. And that was what we wanted. We wanted it to be innovative in how we approached it. So.
Daniel, final thoughts?
I mean, it absolutely was, right? I think the unfortunate part is now everything has to be compared to this, and so I'm always gonna be like, but they didn't let me cook. Or just so many other things. It's so funny. The examples really abound. It's been a really packed 2 days, and I think I think the question was about what I think in terms of how it will affect the kids. I do love all of that. I think you both nailed it. I mean, you just heard three experts on the topic speak about this, and they sort of nailed it, right? Of the multidisciplinary nature of not just any topic, but of learning in general. How this topic happened to be this, but that to say to a kid, someday, learning how to learn is something we often say in, the liberal arts colleges and in schools, but what does that actually mean when we say that? Like, how do you give somebody a toolkit to say, I want this topic in my life, whatever it might be, jazz music or 1940s LA, like who cares what the topic is? Do they actually have this sort of skill set to teach themselves on these topics in this and to show them that actually not only can you immerse yourself in a subject, but you can do it in almost every aspect. You can grab any aspect of that particular topic and go forward depending on what your particular preferences might be. That is a lifetime skill. That's one of those, like, you're watching people train something that they'll use not just because of the facts of the Silk Road, but because if they want to, I don't know, learn a foreign language, they will know that they should immerse themselves this way. That's a muscle, and I think teaching a topic is one thing, but teaching learning is that's strong kung fu.
I think, you're right. You all hit the nail on the head. There's learning for the sake of learning numbers, learning your letters, learning, a verb from a noun, but then there's the why of learning and what you can do with it. And I think I speak for many when I say thank you for taking that time to go that deep with our students and, being innovative. And thank you all for joining us. I could talk about this for ages. I could talk about books. I love hearing you all get so excited about the students. But thank you for joining us and for sharing all of your knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for listening. If there's a topic you'd like to hear discussed, send us an email to communications@canyonsdistrict.org.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect Canyons. Connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram @Canyons District, or on our website, canyonsdistrict.org.